So today we'll have our introductions and then a safety moment, which is how PSE starts any meeting. And then we'll talk about what is customer connected solar, how to get started. We'll get to hear from a solar installer and then review any other renewable energy options if solar turns out not to be for you. We'll also have that Q&A session at the end, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can during that time. So I'm Megan Lochter. I'm a program manager with our community involvement team, and that just means our events team. And I'm a renewables participant, but I'm a renter, so I can't have solar on my home. So I'll hand it off to Adam.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Adam Crawford. I am the outreach manager for Kittitas County. I help out with the electric vehicles and renewables team. And my wife and I installed solar on our home back in 2018. I'll hand it off to Michael.
Well, Michael, you're on mute.
Thank you, Adam. Michael Peterson, program coordinator for net metering. Been with the net metering team for 3 years and PSE for 9. And I will hand it off to Dan.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Dan Marshall. I also work at PSE in the net metering department, along with Michael. Part of my role over there is to help customers and installers kind of understand the process. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but that's my role at PSE. I will pass it off to Emily.
Good morning, everyone. I am Emily Rigg, and I am a program coordinator on our energy advisor team here at PSE. We're able to help via phone and email with specifically solar questions. So it's a great resource if you have questions afterwards, and just anytime. We have a fantastic team here. I'll pass it to Marcus.
Thanks, Emily. My name is Marcus Virta, and I'm here today on behalf of the Washington Solar Energy Industries Association. I'm the president, which is a collection of about 40 different solar-specific companies operating in Washington State. I bought the house that I live in 2017, and I think the week I bought it, I was on the roof installing solar. So I've owned solar for 6 years now, and I'm really excited to dive into this and look forward to answering your guys' questions today. Thanks.
All right. So here at PSE, safety is of the utmost importance. And so we always like to start off our webinars or our meetings with a safety moment. And for this webinar, we wanted to focus on winter hiking tips. And so for some of you like me, it's been a long winter and I've been jonesing to get outside. And so I like to follow these tips when doing it. The first is making sure someone knows where you are going and when you are expected back, just in case something does happen. You want to make sure somebody knew where you were heading. Dress in layers to adjust to changing weather. That includes covering your skin, taking gloves, a hat, and then I always like to take an extra jacket just in case. Consider carrying a map or compass, and that's a paper map. I know I always rely on my cell phone, but when you're hiking in the winter, sometimes your battery can will not last as long, and so you want to make sure you have a backup. Wear proper footwear with good tread. I was reminded of that earlier this winter when I stepped out on some ice and almost fell to the ground. You want to stay hydrated, pick a calorie-dense food, and then finally, you want to be aware of reduced visibility and shorter daylight hours. You might want to consider packing a headlamp. I always like to take a backup battery for a cell phone charger, and then also have an emergency bag in my vehicle. So with that, if you are going out, just make sure to use those hiking tips and enjoy the Pacific Northwest. And one of the most important things for attending today's webinar. You have all been entered into winning a $100 gift card to Fred Meyer's. And so those winners will be notified via email later today. So good luck to everybody that is on today's webinar. And we'll start with a quick poll. The question is, how long have you been thinking about solar for your home? So you'll see this poll pop up on the screen. Is it something you just started to think about? Is it over the last year? Maybe it's been over the last couple years, or maybe it's been longer than that, but the timing has never been right. If it is something else, go ahead and put that in the chat. And I am going to go ahead and pose this question to Michael. How long has it been for you thinking about solar?
Yeah, Adam, thank you. I have actually been thinking about solar for the last couple of years here. The one thing that I is really conscious about is the fact that it is a substantial cost to get solar installed here. So I've been looking at the fact that I'm going to get 2 to 3 bids for when that time comes. But also, I have found that I need to do some other upgrades to my house as far as efficiency goes. So that is the one thing that I'm working on right now, is actually getting my house as efficient as possible to use the least amount of energy so that I can get the correct solar array put onto my house here.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Michael. Okay, we'll go ahead and close that poll. I see a lot coming in here for the chat. Some of you already have solar installed. It looks like coming in first at 41% was over the last few years, and coming in second at 27% was more than 2 years, but the time has never been right. All right, well, thanks everybody for participating in that poll. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Michael for our next section.
Thanks again, Adam. So what is customer connected solar? Customer connected solar is when a customer generates their own renewable energy, lowering their electricity bills and reducing their carbon footprint. And PSE offers this. We're going to provide you some information here to help get started on installing solar panels into your home. So what is net metering? I think I saw this in the Q&A here where someone had a question. So this is going to kind of describe to you exactly what net metering is. So we will start off with the fact that we're going to use the sun as an energy source. The sun is going to go ahead and shine directly onto our solar panels that we have installed either on our roof, or you can certainly do a ground mount system as well if you have a large field to install them in. Then the panel, and that energy is actually DC in retrospect here, which the house needs it to be done over to AC. So there is an inverter that the panels go into, and the DC energy goes into, and so then that'll get converted to AC, which the house can then use to go ahead and on any energy that is being needed by the house at that time. And then you have a net meter. The net meter is a two-way communication device where it's going to not only track the energy that you take from the grid, but if you are overproducing what the house needs at that particular moment, that energy will go back to the grid and will be counted so you can use it at a later time. So the energy produced by the panels first is going to be self-consumed by the house, and then anything extra would go back to the grid. And then times when you have more energy needed than what you are producing, then you will grab energy from the grid here. Now, the energy you send back to the grid will be put into a bank for you, which will allow you to actually use that bank at a time when you are actually consuming more than what you are producing. Next slide, please. So we have seen a tremendous growth of customers here in the last few years. And you can tell by this graph that with the fact that we are, you could just see the stair step actually just increase more than what anybody had imagined here. And, you know, we are over 15,000 customers now that have gotten solar here. And, you know, between 2018 and 2022, you know, we probably did about 8,000 of those customers here. So quite a turnaround of how it first started out. And I will give it over to Dan now.
Hey, thanks, Michael. Appreciate that overview. I see quite a number of questions coming in. Hopefully some of what we're talking about will answer many of those questions. But I just, you know, he gave you an overview, Michael gave you an overview of kind of how solar works, as well as kind of what trends we're seeing. And some of the questions I see coming in are related to, like, how do I get solar installed? What's the process? So for those folks on this call that are asking that question, hope this will answer it. I see some questions about a missing link. psc.com/netmetering should also get you to our particular landing page that talks about solar if you're doing research on your own, either right now or at a later time. On that site, there's several different resources on how to find a solar installer and kind of what to look for, what you're interested in. But a few things I want to point out. There's different tabs, one for if you're interested, one if you have solar, one if you're an installer, and some other resources. So you can browse through the different links on that webpage to kind of start to understand a little bit about the process of net metering and what it means. And then I know Marcus will talk about this as well, but from his perspective. But at PSC, we have a list of recommended energy professionals that we've kind of vetted and gone through to make sure that they know what they're doing when it comes to installing solar. There's a lot of little ins and outs as far as requirements and laws and regulations and standards. So it definitely makes sense to look for some of those energy professionals that have been vetted, that understand solar and the ins and outs, whether it's questions such as if a production meter is required, what type of meter is required, how big of a system you need and stuff like that. So please utilize that resource, use that link for net metering and see if that'll help you guys a little bit. There's a lot of great information there. But we really rely on the installer in most cases to really kind of be the turnkey solution. So that way you don't have to know everything. You're going to rely on that installer to really understand the needs and tell you kind of what system you need and why you need a certain type of system or a certain size of a system and what you can expect from it. Next slide, please. So going on to a little bit more about the recommended energy professionals and kind of letting them take over the reins. We always recommend from utility, and we get a lot of customer questions about this. You know, I got one bid or I got one person knocking on my door. Should I go with him? What should I do? And we're really saying you should get 3 bids at least. I know there's a lot of different installers, a lot of different abilities, a lot of different services. Some do roofing, some do extra stuff that may be above and beyond. And it just really depends on your situation. But get 3 bids. That way you really know kind of what the ballpark is as far as how much you're paying for the system, what your expectations are, as well as just kind of knowing, you know, if you're getting a really good price or not. Because sometimes you have a difficult situation, such as a stone roof or a tile roof that may require different pricing. But talking to one contractor, they might not know that, or they might have to consider that, where another contractor might come out and look at that and take that in consideration. So it really makes sense to get multiple bids, just that way you get a really good sense of what your situation is as far as your house and your solar capacity, as well as just kind of what your options are from so many different manufacturers and different panel types as well. And again, I just want to reiterate, going to psc.com/netmetering, There's a link there to help you get started. And most installers that we work with, so I work with installers every day. They're more than happy to take on the process for you, so you don't have to learn and understand everything on your own. You're paying them for their expertise, so rely on them for that as well. So I'll go ahead and leave it with that. I don't know if you want to take over a poll, Adam.
Yep, happy to. All right, so this is our second and final poll. The question is, what is most influencing your consideration of solar? Is it reducing your carbon footprint and climate impact? Is it the financial investment? Maybe it's new and exciting technology, energy independence and power security, or is it something else? If it is something else, go ahead and put that in the chat. And I will go ahead and pose this question to Dan.
Sure. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, let me think about this one. So what's influencing my consideration of solar? That's a great question. I heard at the beginning, several folks on the panel here talk about their experience with solar. I live in a situation which may be familiar to some of you out there in the audience. I live in a condo right now. So I've been considering solar, but I have to talk to my HOA or my condo association. They're a little bit slow to kind of decide if they want to move forward with solar or allow it due to HOA regulations. So I'm kind of in a limbo right now, waiting to see if maybe they want to wait until they replace a roof, or if they're willing to let me use part of the roof space. So, it's kind of been an interesting consideration in my situation, but luckily the utility that I'm at, I'm a little bit further north of PSU territory, but they have what they call community solar. So right now I'm subscribed to community solar, and it's been great. It's actually looking at my bills being reduced in the summer. This last year has been phenomenal just from using community solar itself.
Excellent. Yeah, great insight to it too, Dan. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to go ahead and close poll number 2. It looks like coming in with 35% was reducing your carbon footprint and climate impact. And right behind that at 33% was energy independence and power security. So thanks everybody for participating in that poll. At this time, I'm going to hand it off to Marcus, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about solar installations.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. So yeah, just again, my name is Marcus Vierta. I'm the president of the Washington Solar Energy Industry Association. So we're a collection of mostly solar installers in Washington state. I've seen some questions in the chat about DIY installations, and there are members in WASIA that do support DIY installers. That's essentially our DNA. As installers in the community, we got into the business because we wanted to do it ourselves. So for folks who are wanting to DIY, I would definitely recommend reaching out to installers and seeing if they do any kind of support for DIY installations, since they've gone through, iterations and iterations of this. But yeah, I wanted to just chat a little bit about both the development of the industry. We're on a pretty rapid growth curve as solar module manufacturing, the solar panel manufacturing, inverter manufacturing, and battery manufacturing have all kind of reached learning curves and are come down so dramatically in price. We're seeing more and more adoption. So that's great, but with that, we're seeing more installers kind of entering the market, and sales organizations and marketing organizations entering the market. So consumer protection is really important to WASIA. It's really important to Puget Sound Energy and the other utility partners we have in this state. And that's a really big synergy between our organizations. So on that note, I wanted to just provide 6 tips that we've outlined that we think are really important for anyone considering solar, making that decision. The first one you've heard already: get multiple bids. I really can't underscore this enough. Local installers are answerable to their communities that they operate in, and they're responsible for the work and the way that they do that work, the way that they do that sales. So you really want to make sure that you're getting bids from local installers and check their reviews. Once you reach out to an installer, you should hear back from a system designer or a sales representative from that organization. And I always really recommend folks to speak to your system designer. There's a fairly complex and dynamic analysis that goes into designing the system, understanding the shade affect for the site, so how much shade and when is where, the condition of the roof, all of those aspects, the electrical architecture of the site, all of those aspects are baked in to the full proposal and system design. So you really want to make sure to get the best result, to challenge your sales rep or your system designer, ask them technical questions, ask them how they know the things that they're proposing are rooted in reality. And that's going to hopefully illuminate, the depth of detail that they've gone to put that system design together. Third, understand the components of the system, what they are and how they work. There are differences in panel manufacturers, in panel types, in inverter types, and in battery types, if there's batteries connected to the system. And all of those differences should have, a well thought out reason for why they're components in the proposal by the installer. All of those components also carry a different warranty. So it's really important to understand what the warranties are associated with the equipment you're installing. And many manufacturers actually have certification programs of installers. So you want to know if those installers have reached those workforce certification milestones, those steps that make them really excellent partners. The financial case is really important to understand. There are ways to, be a bit disingenuous with the numbers. So you really want to put a magnifying glass on the financial calculations that an installer are making. And that's really why it's so helpful to get multiple bids, so that you can try to vet those financial arguments that one installer is making against the other, system production expectations, and whatnot. And it's important to keep in mind that these systems are going to last, hopefully, a really long time. The typical warranty period for a solar panel is 25 years. So that's typically the financial calculation for folks considering solar. But you want to be honest with yourself about how long you're going to be in your home or business, and make sure that those timelines really match up for you. The last 2 points, you want to find examples of the installer's work. Make sure that you've seen what products they've installed out there. Ask for references. Talk to other folks who have worked with that contractor. If they're local, like I said, they're answerable to their community. And it's really important that they are a part of that community, that they're paying fair wages, that they're offering really great benefits, and they're taking care of their workers. A healthy and well-supported installation crew is going to treat your home like they would treat their own. And that is just going to mean a really meaningful project that doesn't have a lot of maintenance long-term. And then the last one, I think the most important, is sleep on it. Never allow yourself to get pushed into making a decision that's as big as this in a short period of time. You always have the right to sleep on something and think about it. So remember that when you're scheduling a meeting, make sure that you can say no, you can say, I need to think about this, I'm getting bids. That's only healthy. And if you feel like you're being pushed around, recognize that that's a red flag, and it's always okay to shut down communication with someone that's trying to bully you into making a decision. It's never what we want. And then as far as resources go, Puget Sound Energy does have a contractor network that's brilliant. They vet their contractors. The Washington Solar Energy Industry Association also has membership, and we have an ethics agreement that's kind of higher above and beyond what's written into law. So I welcome you all to go to WASEIA. It's WASEIA.org. And on that website, you can find out more about our members. And there's actually a map with all of the installers that are members of WASEIA in Washington State, which is a great place to start. And the last thing I would say is that WASEIA and Puget Sound Energy are working on some collaborative legislation around consumer protection that I'm really excited about. We couldn't do this in Washington without excellent partners like PSE, and are really appreciative of their support in the legislature as well. And with that, I will kick it back to the PSC team.
Thank you, Marcus. That was great. Yep. WASIA, I see someone putting in a chat in the Q&A. WASIA.org, this is a nonprofit, definitely full of good resources as well. I utilize that from time to time to double check some stuff that I look at for installers. And again, I can't reiterate enough what he was saying. I agree with everything as far as sleeping on it. We get calls all the time, and maybe Emily can answer some questions later on the calls she gets as an energy advisor, but we get a lot of customers think I'm being pressured and they're not sure if they're signing too quickly or if they're going to miss out on a deal, but that's some good stuff. So I do see some questions here. I know we got a little bit of time left before Q&A. So the next two slides, I think here are going to be about renewable programs. If maybe you're in a situation like myself, where you're in a condo or you can't get solar, and we can talk about some of those renewable programs, and specifically, I think community solar as well is one of our newer programs. So for those of you that either determine solar is just not right for you, or it's maybe financially, it's a big leap to make, PSE has other programs in green energy and renewables. Some of those are community solar. I think there's green power, solar choice, and just like 4 or 5 different programs listed on our website that really give you some options on being green, being sustainable, doing a little bit better for the environment without having to put the money forth, or if you don't have the resources or the roof space to do that. So just make sure you can go from psc.com/netmetering or psc.com/renewables. We have several easy to remember URLs to find those other renewable programs. Let's go on to the next slide here, and we'll talk about community solar briefly. So community solar is one of our newer programs. It is, oh, I see the link for renewables. Perfect, thank you. It is essentially where we install solar in different areas. I think the picture in the background here is on top of a water tower, large system, and customers can subscribe to that community solar. And so they can basically buy a share or a portion of the system. And I think it starts at $20 a month. Yep, sorry, reading the conversations here happen just to make sure there's no questions on this and live. But $20 a month added to your utility bill, that allows you to buy a portion of the solar to help go green, go renewable. You can buy up to 120% of your usage. So you can basically meet your usage or go above and beyond a little bit, but it gives you that ability to do so. And I believe that's for the lifetime of community solar. And when you say lifetime, 15 years, I believe, is kind of what we're quoting as far as the lifetime of the community solar system. It could be more, but again, it's one of those things that really depends on the lifespan. As Marcus said, most systems, residential systems, are warranted for 20 years plus. So definitely, if you're interested, look at our community solar site. I do want to point out that we've had several different community solar sites that we've launched throughout the year, and a lot of them are filled up and on a waiting list. I think we have one site available, Manitosh Ridge, that should be still open. I think as of this morning it was, but look on there. You can subscribe to updates to keep up to date on what other sites might come online or other updates on community solar, or just learn a little bit more on what it means to go through community solar versus rooftop solar on your own home. So I really encourage you to go to that website, look at a little bit more. If you have questions, there's a way to reach out and contact us either through net metering or through an energy advisor using the link on that website to find out more, to ask more questions as you come up with them. That's all I want to say about community solar at this point. I know there's a lot of questions in Q&A, so I want to get to those. But if you have any questions on today's information from a PSU standpoint, I encourage you to visit psc.com/netmetering. Lots of great information there. And so I just want to hand it over to Emily. Maybe you want to open up Q&A and moderate that a little bit.
Yes, thank you, Dan. We have some fantastic questions coming through. Lots of questions. Let's start with some common questions I'm seeing. One of the big ones right now is what incentives are available for installing solar?
Marcus, or do you want me to take that?
Yep, I'm happy to. And I've seen a lot of questions about the Inflation Reduction Act and incentives. So happy to chat about that a little bit. The big one that we've been talking about is net energy metering, which is something that PSE is still doing. Net energy metering allows you to essentially generate excess energy on really sunny summer days. You spin your main electric meter effectively backwards, and you get credit at the whole value of those kilowatt hours on your bill. And then, all summer long, essentially, you're able to build up a bank of credits that you can use to pay the balance of your electric bill in the winter time or in the evenings when you're not generating as much electricity. That's the idea around net metering. There have been some questions in here around net metering thresholds and limits. And WASIA and PSE are working together on some legislation and trying to determine what comes after net energy metering 1.0 retail rate net metering. So I would encourage all of you to check out House Bill 1427. That's the legislation that WASIA has been working on, and we're in close dialogue with PSE on that, and it'll likely change a bit as it continues working through the legislature. On top of net metering, there's a sales tax exemption for solar in Washington state. It's a full sales tax exemption for projects that are under 100 kilowatts. 100 kilowatts is roughly 250 to 300 solar panels. So it's much larger than any residential system would be. So you could get a full sales tax exemption. The project needs to be between 1 kilowatt and 100 kilowatts to get that sales tax exemption. So typically, the minimum system size you could install is around 3 or 4 panels to get that. And then there's also the federal income tax credit. And that's what got extended in the Inflation Reduction Act last summer. So that tax credit was scheduled to be stepping down. And through the IRA or IRA, that was extended for at least 10 years based on how we're doing in decarbonization as a country. So that tax credit is 30%. And for the first time ever, that tax credit is now available to nonprofits, tribal entities, and utilities. So we're really excited about some of the provisions in IRA and how it's going to likely open up capacity for more development of solar by utilities, with utilities, and in the nonprofit sector as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Marcus. I also want to add from the utility perspective, I think we touched on a little bit, but right now it is a 1-for-1 credit. So if you generate 1 kilowatt hour of excess solar, whether that goes to your bank or lowers your bill, it's a 1-for-1 as well. So that's just a really great use of net metering right now.
Great. Thank you both. Yeah, that Inflation Reduction Act was amazing as far as how long it extended the credit, because it was slated to end soon. So it's giving people a lot more time to get solar installed. Okay. Another big one we're seeing, if the grid is down during the day, will I still have power to my house?
Yeah, we're hitting on all the good ones. I love these questions so far. I'll speak to that a little bit, and if somebody else wants to jump in afterward, they certainly can. Historically, when the grid goes down, there's a power outage, systems typically shut down for safety. That's been the norm for most systems, I'll say, over the last, I don't know, up until last year, we've seen most systems shut down. There's new inverters and batteries and other technologies now that gateways, backup gateways and stuff like that can be part of a solar system that allow them to operate in backup mode when the grid is down. And that's a great feature to have, which I think a lot of customers want or had expected their systems to work that way. So again, when you talk to a great installer, hopefully they'll explain to you how a system works, if it's going to work when there's a power outage or not, or what needs to happen if that's one of your goals or desires for a system that operates when the system's down.
I would add to that, Dan, that it's important too to remember when we lose power in Washington State is typically not when it's really bright and sunny. So can systems electrify loads when the grid is down without a battery? We're just starting to scratch the surface on the technology that can do that. But whether that'll be a good actual kind of experience for the homeowner is another question, and one you really want to talk through with your installer and understand what are the dynamics and capacities of this system.
Great, thank you. And I saw this question earlier, but I can't find it. I thought it was a great question. It was something along the lines of, can you debunk the myth that solar isn't good in our region as far as production goes?
Yeah, that's actually, it's funny, that's not a question we hear a ton anymore, which I guess it tells you how it portrays how long I've been doing this. I've been installing solar since just before 2010. And that was the only question we got back then. We've got these really long productive summer days. We're high enough on Earth to have these long sunny summer days at moderate temperatures where solar is really productive. And then, there's actually an inverse relationship with the operating temperature of a system and the voltage output. So you actually see really productive systems on cold, snowy, winter sunny days. So there is absolutely, production capacity that happens in the winter, but it's far lower. The truth is the majority of production from systems happens between April and October. So that's why net metering is really important for these systems, and it's why it's just a part of the dynamic of everything to consider.
And also I would say that, from a PSC side, here on the net metering team, we see many customers, they actually get their system sized accordingly to how many kilowatt hours they actually are consuming in a year. And when you get it sized appropriately, which isn't as big as what you think it's going to actually need to be, you are actually going to end up with probably a good chance of not paying for any kilowatt hours on your PSC bill statement for a fiscal year.
Yeah, it's an important point, Michael, and one I'd want to make for the whole group here, that you do want your solar installer to design the system to your demand, to your annual load. The way it works is on March 31st every year, if you've generated thousands and thousands of kilowatt hours of more electricity than you use in a year, that extra energy is just zeroed out. You don't get any kind of financial compensation for that. So it really is, it goes to the financial calculations that the installer is providing for you, and really scrutinizing, why do I need this system? Why do I need this many panels? I live in a house that's fully electrified. I drive an electric car. I have 29 panels on my roof, and that covers all of my usage year round. So the other thing is, it really depends on the person. I'm an energy nerd, and I really pinch electrons here and there and try to optimize everything. So having that understanding of your consumption is like the first most important thing when designing a system.
Yeah, I'll jump in here too. When we looked at installing ours back in 2018, we looked at how much it was going to cost, what's our usage. But one thing that we didn't think about was 3 years later, we'd be buying an electric car. And now we have that extra electrical production that would be beneficial if we would have, looked at what we're going to do in the future, and then add a couple panels for that. So something you want to think about when looking at an install.
Great. And sort of related to that is, there's a question that I've seen come through a lot. What factors determine how expensive an installation is?
Happy to jump in there. Sorry, I feel like I sometimes dominate these. There's a million factors. So if it's a roof mounted system, the pitch of the roof, the age of the roof. I saw a question there is, do I need a new roof before installing? And it's always a good idea to have as new of a roof substrate as possible because these systems last so long. The amount of panels, there's certain economies of scale that you can achieve with a system. And then the electrical infrastructure in your home. Are there some expensive upgrades that need to happen in order for this system to interconnect safely into your system? So you want to scrutinize all of those things and ask those things. And a really good installer that's answerable to their community is going to identify all of those costs up front. They're going to do an on-site assessment where they measure the roof, they measure the solar resource, they measure your electrical capacity, and they should be able to have a really in-depth conversation with you, itemizing all of those costs and telling you, with confidence what the final project cost will be so that there aren't any surprises once you're at the installation stage. That's the last thing that you should want as a homeowner. And if the installer is doing their job right, they should be protecting you from any changing costs.
One of the things that we had when we went out to get a bid was multiple options from that installer. And so we had a south-facing section of the roof that we definitely wanted to have solar panels put on, but we also looked at having more of them and then looking at what the efficiency would be for that and what that added cost was. So if you get more options from one of those solar installers, that would be beneficial too.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of talk about people having tall trees blocking their roof, the direction that the roof might be facing. So all of those things, it sounds like a sun survey. Is that what you call it, Marcus? That we would determine how great or how feasible a solar system would be in those situations.
Exactly. Yeah. So you want that solar resource assessment done, and there are ways to do that remotely. But there's that remote assessment, that satellite assessment or that LiDAR assessment is only as good as when that last satellite image or LiDAR measurement was taken. So, I've been doing this for a long time, and I typically like to use those remote assessments, but also get on site and verify them with on-site measurements that have been, that we've used and have been vetted for decades. So yeah, there's just nothing like getting on site really allows the installer to verify that their assumptions from the remote assessment are accurate. So especially given the cost of these systems, you're talking about spending tens of thousands of dollars potentially. You really want to make sure that installer is getting out on site and spending time with you to really understand your needs and your actual home.
Great.
Hey, Emily, as you look for the next question here, I would just like to talk about timelines and customer expectation of from the time that you actually decide that you want to go solar to the time that it actually gets interconnected with PSE's grid here. Typically, as Marcus is saying, that a good installer is going to spend some time and with you and make sure that you're getting the right system. I know that you're probably looking at 2 to 4 months at least as far as getting the design all done and then getting it actually installed on the roof. The next process that PSE is actually starts with which is when the installer would provide an application to us through our portal that is found at pse.com/netmetering. The review process takes about 10 business days from the time we actually receive the application. And from there, we are waiting for the installer to actually, once we give the approval, we are then waiting for the installer to give us the permit information of the fact that it has passed local jurisdiction permitting or LNI there. And then they give us that information. We take a look at it. We will then go ahead and verify it and order the commissioning of the system, which we do within 2 to 3 business days from the time that we get the notification about it. And then we have an order in the field. And right now with the fact that we saw how many customers are going solar right now, that we are looking at a 30-day period to when we expect to have the commissioning of the system completed there. So this is not a quick, easy process. This is something that is pretty lengthy and, can take you anywhere from 2 to 7 months for everything to get done there. So just realize that as you are starting this up here, that, you're probably looking at 7 months for it to get installed and completed. So.
Yeah, good point, Michael. I don't know if you really touched on it or maybe I missed it. So we use what we call PowerClerk as an application portal where installers typically know to log in and submit all the paperwork and documentation. I think all of our emails that go out throughout every step of the process also include the customer. So customers should keep an eye out for those emails if they're moving forward with an installation in PSC territory, that they'll be notified as each step of the process is gone through. So hopefully they're keeping an eye out for those and staying informed as well. At least from PSC, we're informing them. Hopefully their installer is doing the same.
Great. There are a lot of questions coming through about the scenario where you might not have a solar installer in your area, and if we have resources for owners who might be installing their own solar.
Yeah, basically, I would say if you are going to install your own solar, here is definitely check out pse.com/net metering. There is examples of a schematic that we would want to see that shows the installation of your panels, how it's going to be on your roof and the inverter you're using and how that's interconnecting with your main service panel all the way out to the net meter there. There is, and as Dan stated, our application process through PowerClerk, we actually have that set up pretty nicely to give you a lot of information as well of what we're looking for when you are installing it yourself there, and so that you can fill that out correctly. As far as the electrical work, I mean, that's kind of on you. I don't have any resources available on our end. I'm sure there is a lot that you could find out on the internet to assist you, but totally is capable to do it yourself there without too much trouble.
Yeah, and I think Marcus referred to it earlier that some installers will help draw diagrams, or do help you along in the industry as well if you reach out. And I don't know I think we've even gotten to the point, Robert. So it sounds like installers are willing to go pretty much anywhere in our territory, or good installers are willing to make a trip if they're serious. But Marcus, do you have any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that folks know, this is a PSE call, and I think that WASIA members cover all of Puget Sound Energy's territory. So using that WASIA database is a good way to get started. But like Michael said, DIY installing solar is doable. A string inverter system can operate up to 600 volts or even 1,000 volts DC. So you do want to make sure you're trained and understand how to, handle high voltage electronics and electrical circuits. And as far as training goes, you can always look at Solar Energy International or heatspring.com. They're two solar training focused organizations that do kind of electrical and installation training. So certainly if I had no experience with electronic circuits or high voltage DC electronics, I would want to do that before taking this type of project on.
Great. And Marcus, yeah, you mentioned that this is a PSE call. I have seen a few questions about, like, say I have Seattle City Light or Snowped, if these programs still apply. And the answer would be yes, that we do have, our state has the same program regardless of what utility what electric utility you have.
It-
Go ahead.
Sorry, Emily, to interrupt. I do think it's worth saying that the Puget Sound Energy is going to do an inspection and installation of your net energy meter, but you do need an inspection by the local electrical authority and potentially inspection by the local structural building authority. Those requirements are going to vary, you know, by county, by city. It varies a lot in Washington. So understanding, you know, I would start there as well. If you're thinking about doing it yourself, is understanding what permits are required for the project and if there's any kind of standard permitting applications needed.
Yeah, I'll just tack on to that real quick, just in case it wasn't understood. You know, as the utility, our role is to make sure that your system is safe for the grid. As Mark was saying, there might be a building permit or electrical permit. They're going to make sure that system is built safe for your house. It's not going to burn your house down. Well, we're just making sure you're not going to affect the grid or hurt a line worker. So we're looking at it from that aspect, that we need to know that you're interconnecting because you're sending electricity back through our lines. So, you know, we can't really help design systems or anything like that for you, but we have net metering, links to recommend energy professionals and stuff like that, where those installers should make sure that portion is handled for you or those resources are available for you.
Hi, Emily. I wanted to jump in here and let you know we have time for one more question.
Okay, great. It's going to be hard to choose the last one because there's so many great ones, but I think a good one we could talk about is I want backup power with my solar array, so batteries. Are there different requirements and a different process with PSC to get that to happen?
Michael, you want to take that one?
Sure, Dan. Thank you. There isn't really too much difference here. I mean, we certainly are going to look at the one-line diagram that we get from the installer to make sure that the batteries are meeting our standards and that the whole system is actually meeting our standards here. But really, as far as any sort of difference on the PSE end, there really isn't anything that we are going to really do here on the PSE end. The fact that you have a battery, it just means that, you know, when the grid goes out, you will have backup battery power to take care of any essential loads that you wanted to have continue running during that outage.
I would add, and sorry, I'll add quickly. Battery storage is quite a bit more complicated than just traditional grid tied solar. So choosing your installer, if you're wanting to incorporate batteries, it's not needed, but if you want to incorporate batteries, choosing your installer is even more important, I would argue, because of the complexity of the electrical interconnection, isolation of those critical loads, and making sure that your expectations meet reality. And that's something I see installers sometimes get wrong, is promising the moon about what a really small battery can do for your home. So again, multiple bids, making sure you're vetting their experience and understanding the physics of batteries, how they operate and how it will operate with your system in the event of a prolonged outage.
And I would say one more thing about batteries is it adds a substantial cost to your actual system. So that is something to really weigh in on as well. So you would want to get those bids for with and without batteries, just to see the difference there and see if it is really worth your the bang for your buck.
Wonderful. Well, will I pass it to Megan or?
Yeah, thank you everybody for the thoughtful discussion today, especially Marcus. We really appreciate your time being here today and all of you joining the call. And so for attending today, you have been entered to win $100 grocery gift card, and we will notify our winners by email today. We'll have 2 winners for that. And there will be a survey as soon as today's event ends here in a minute. there will be a survey and we would love to get any feedback from you. So appreciate you taking the time to fill that out. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us, and we wish you luck on your solar adventures. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.